In this course, we are going to look at specifically social anthropology because that is where culture lies. Social anthropology can be characterized by ethnography as a method of research. Ethnography is a qualitative research method, and it's a method where observation is largely used. When it comes to ethnography, although it is mainly described as an observational method, it can also be looked at as a specific way of conducting your research that also can include listening to conversations and interviews, anything to do with participants, and that can be direct where it's like interviews and listening to them, or indirect where you're just observing, and that would be then called participant observation. However, whether we are doing direct or indirect ethnographical work, we always need something that will back up our stance. So that could be your literature, that's when that would come in, your readings, your findings basically from other authors as well. Now that we've discussed what anthropology is and how you could possibly study anthropology, we're now going to discuss what is culture. Culture is a very difficult term to define, and this is because there are various uses of the term. So in the 1990s, the anthropologists Kruber and Kluckheim stated that culture is, there's no agreement in terms of defining this word. This is due to the complexity as well as the understanding of the term, and like I said, it's due to the various uses of the term. Generally speaking though, during the 1990s, it was used in three specific ways. The three ways of which culture was used was firstly, culture as a special intellectual or artistic endeavor. This would be things like your popular culture. What is popular now? The music trends, the fashion trends, celebrities, I guess, pop culture. Well, that's how we know it now, pop culture, but it's actually popular culture, the things that are trending universally, essentially. The second way of which the term culture was used was a quality that was possessed by special groups. So the way that specific groups did certain things, because everyone within that group would do the same thing. So that would be the quality within that social group. A third way in which culture was used was the uniqueness of many and varied cultures of different peoples and societies. So that would be how different social groups did their specific things and went about their lives and their various rituals and traditions. Every group had its own ritual and tradition, which is what made it unique and made it their culture. Those were now the three ways in which the term culture was used. These three ways in which the term culture was used can still be seen in today's world, in our spaces and the spaces that we occupy, as well as the spaces that we tend to enter at various times of our lives. The key characterizations of culture is that culture is manifested in different layers of depth. Culture affects our behaviors as well as interpretations of various things and how we see the world and how we see other people. Culture can be differentiated from universal human nature as well as unique individual personality. Culture influences our historical progress as well as the process of our lives and how we are living them right now and possibly will in the future. And culture is usually associated with social groups because we see these mainly within our tribes or within ethnic groups. Here in South Africa, this is very evident in our ethnic groups because we have 11 groups. So each group has the way that they do specific things and has their own language, which then falls a part of their culture. So you would say that if you're a Zulu person and you speak the Zulu language, there are specific Zulu traditions that you go through that therefore is your culture. culture is always both socially and psychologically distributed in a group, and this can be done verbally, can be done through written form, it can be done through observation of how the people in your social group do things as well. Culture is a subject for gradual change. As mentioned before, culture does not stay stagnant throughout, like forever. Culture does change eventually according to the world and how the world changes. However, there are some aspects of culture that do remain the same. The various parts of a culture are to some degree all interpreted and are all interrelated. As I said, there are certain aspects of cultures that can be seen as universal, and the universality of this does come through colonialism, where Africa was colonized, and some of the Western traditions and Western methods and perspectives were then adopted, and hence then that became something that could be interrelated with the Western culture. That can be then viewed like that. So some aspects of culture can be viewed as interrelated. Besides colonization, you could say that they are interrelated through similarities as well. Some cultures are similar, such as the groups here in South Africa. We've got 11 ethnic groups, and the Nguni tribes, which are the Zulu and the Xhosas, have some similarities within the way that they do things, but they are not the same culture. Now that we have discussed what anthropology is and what culture is, hopefully we have a better understanding of where we're going with this course, which is now leading us to our next topic, which is material culture. So the study of material culture is concerned with the relationship between people and things, whether the past or in the present. Therefore, this is the way that we as people interact with these objects on a daily basis, or the way that we as people have interacted with these objects in the past, or the way that we could interact with these objects in the future. Material culture is that relationship between a person and the object. That is what material culture is. And this happens in every space that we occupy. In different spaces, we engage with different objects, and those objects represent certain things that we will discuss within our next week and our next lecture, where we will go into further depth of how some objects help us to create our identity or a collective identity, and can also help us find a sense of belonging, or can just be an object that is a representation of us or the space that we occupy, or just our culture and where we belong. But this will be further discussed through the weeks of the course, I think specifically next week. So we will go into more depth of material culture and what that all entails. Before we end off today's lesson, please note that there is an assignment that I would please like you to complete. For this assignment, I'd like you to find an object in your space, or in any space that you will occupy over the next couple of days. I want you to take a picture of that object and tell me how you identify with that object and why you would consider it a part of material culture. This assignment must please be done by the next lecture, and I just want you to explain what the object is and characterize the object and how it relates to material culture and your engagement with it. You can send me a picture of this object as well as a small paragraph stating